June 1940. Nazi Germany attacks France by land and by air. Within weeks, Hitler has occupied most of the country. The unoccupied areas are overseen by Vichy French authorities working in concert with the Nazis. Refugees, many of them Jews, flock to the port city of Marseilles in the unoccupied southern part of France. Thousands line up outside of the United States consulate in hopes of obtaining documents that will allow them to leave France. The U.S., which has not yet entered the war, is a neutral nation. American officials at the consulate are ordered by their superiors at the State Department to do nothing to help those trying to escape the Nazis. One official, Hiram Bingham IV, known as Harry, refuses to follow those orders. Bingham, the son of a famous explorer and U.S. Senator, the great-grandson of the founder of Tiffany & Company, could not stand idly by.
Harry actually saw the long lines of desperate refugees outside of his window at the consulate, so he knew that action was necessary, regardless of policy.
That policy was set by Breckinridge Long, an Assistant Secretary of State who was the head of the Special War Problems Division and an intimate of President Roosevelt. Long was a well-known anti-Semite who was opposed to any immigration from Europe to the U.S. In a State Department memo, Long told subordinates that they could stop refugees from coming to the U.S. from Marseilles and other places, quote, by simply advising our consuls to put every obstacle in the way which would postpone and postpone and postpone the granting of the visas. Vichy French officials were under orders by the Nazis to hold refugees until German intelligence could investigate them. Without exit visas, these refugees, the majority of them Jews, were forced into internment camps. Harry Bingham began issuing documents that became a lifeline to those who had no legal means of obtaining an exit visa to a neutral country.
He would issue affidavits in lieu of passports. Now, these were important documents to help people to escape and obtain other visas.
One of the first people he helped was the respected author, Leon Feuchtwanger, who was being held in a Vichy detention center.
Leon Feuchtwanger was high up on Hitler's most wanted list for having written anti-Nazi novels. And then he had him stay in his home for about 6 weeks with his wife, Marta.
The decision to hide Feuchtwanger was one that led to strong disagreements with his superiors at the U.S. consulate.
He would argue with his boss, and that was picked up by the author who was hiding in his villa. He could hear him shouting on the phone to people in the embassy.
After sheltering him in his home, the diplomat then put together an escape plan for the novelist and his wife, which enabled them to make their way to the U.S. Harry Bingham soon began working with journalist Varian Fry, who ran the Emergency Rescue Committee, an international effort created to help those trying to flee the Nazis.
He came from the Emergency Rescue Committee from New York City with a list of prominent people, intellectuals and artists. And he helped him to locate some of those and help him to escape.
One of those individuals was the famed artist Marc Chagall, who Harry Bingham convinced to accept an exit visa and flee to the U.S. The diplomat also aided political theorist Hannah Arendt and the artist Max Ernst. And he gave shelter in his home to the author Heinrich Mann, the elder brother of the famed novelist Thomas Mann. But it was not only the prominent who were saved by Harry Bingham.
What I never knew about my father was that he had issued so many visas to people who were not so famous. And his compassion and love of humanity was behind it.
In a year's time, Harry Bingham helped more than 2,500 refugees escape the Nazis. Those efforts eventually led to his losing his position in Marseilles.
He was in charge of issuing visas, But then at one point they dismissed him from that supervisory capacity, and eventually he wound up being sent to Lisbon and then down to Buenos Aires.
In 1945, Harry Bingham resigned from the Foreign Service, his career at a dead end. His decision to issue documents and exit visas in opposition to State Department policies had ended any hopes he'd had of advancing in his career. He returned to the family farm in Salem, Connecticut, and with his wife Rose raised their 11 children. He tried several business ideas that did not succeed and lived off an inheritance from his father while his wife taught. His children knew little, if anything, about his wartime work. And then, after he died in 1988, one of his sons found documents that outlined his activities in Marseilles. The children took it upon themselves to let the world know what their father had done. In 1998, because of their efforts, Harry Bingham and 10 other diplomats were honored by Yad Vashem, Israel's national Holocaust memorial, for having saved more than 200,000 Jews during the war. And in 2006, the U.S. Postal Service issued a Hiram Bingham IV commemorative stamp. The man who was drummed out of his government job for following his conscience was now being honored by the U.S. government for his wartime heroism. While all of the honors mean a lot to Robert Bingham and his siblings, few things mean more than the letter he received from a woman named Ellie Sherman.
Of the three in my family your father saved, I am the last one alive, and I write this with trembling fingers and many a tear. Your father provided us with documents because we no longer held citizenship in any country, and therefore had no papers. I still have the document. We cannot honor him enough. He saved my mother, my sister, and me. Without him, we would not have been able to avoid the concentration camp to which we were assigned 2 days later. Ellie Sherman.